You've heard of Pearl Harbor and Guadalcanal, but there's one raid from 1943 that Japan tried to hide. Singapore Harbor. 7 ships destroyed, 14 men against the entire Imperial Navy. 0 casualties. The Japanese had no idea who did it. So they tortured and killed innocent civilians instead. What kind of operation could penetrate the most heavily defended harbor in Southeast Asia? Who were these men? And how did they turn a Japanese fishing boat into the deadliest weapon in the Pacific? September 2nd, 1943. Exmouth Gulf, Western Australia. A 70-foot fishing boat called the Crate slips out of harbor carrying 14 men who look nothing like commandos. Skin stained brown with dye. Hair dyed black. Wearing sarongs. They're not Australian soldiers anymore. They're Indonesian fishermen, and they're about to sail 5,000 miles into enemy waters to destroy the heart of Japan's shipping empire. If you value documented military history and special operations like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Australian War Memorial Archives, updated in November 2024, and the Australian National Maritime Museum's recently published Operation JWIC documentation from January 2025. These aren't generic sources. These are the actual military records, survivor testimonies, and Japanese captured documents that prove every detail we're telling you. Now back to the information. The man behind this impossible mission, Captain Ivan Lyon, 28 years old, British Army, Gordon Highlanders, the kind of officer who escaped from Singapore when it fell and immediately started planning how to get back. Lyon had seen the Imperial Japanese Navy turn Singapore Harbor into an unbreakable fortress. Patrol boats, anti-aircraft guns, minefields. The Japanese called it impregnable. Lyon called it a target. His partner, Bill Reynolds, 61 years old, Australian civilian, owned the fishing boat they'd used for the raid. Reynolds had used the same vessel to evacuate refugees when Singapore fell. He knew every current, every shoal, every hiding spot between Australia and enemy territory. The Japanese fishing boat Kofuku Maru became the Crate, named after a small Asian snake with venom that kills in minutes. March 1942. Special Operations Australia forms in Melbourne. Code name: Inter-Allied Services Department. British Special Operations. Executive officers who'd escaped Singapore's fall. They needed revenge. June 1942. Z Special Unit organized. Australian Army and Royal Australian Navy personnel. Their mission: asymmetric warfare behind Japanese lines. Train commandos to do what conventional forces couldn't. Strike where the enemy felt safe. Camp Aikes, Refuge Bay, Hawkesbury River, New South Wales. Remote, inaccessible. Perfect for training men to disappear. Major Lyon and Captain Donald Davidson run the program. Davidson, Royal Australian Naval Volunteer Reserve, expert in small boat operations. These men will teach 14 volunteers how to paddle folding canoes 50 miles through enemy waters, attach explosives to ship hulls, and vanish without a trace. The full boats. Collapsible canoes manufactured by Walter Hone. Only 2 suitable models found in all of Australia after an exhaustive search. Bought on the spot after a test run on the Yarra River at Alphington. Colonel Mott and Major Moneypenny watching every detail. 1-man and 2-man versions, canvas and wood frames that fold into backpack size, silent as death on water. Training includes hand-to-hand combat, night navigation, weapons, and explosives. But the core skill, paddling these full boats for hours through rough seas while carrying 70 kilograms of plastic explosive, 808 explosive, enough to sink 15 ships. The men practice in darkness, they practice in storms. They practice until they can navigate by star positions alone. January in 1943. The Crate moves from training camp at Broken Bay, New South Wales, to Thursday Island. Aboard, 3 British personnel, 11 Australian personnel. Commander, Ivan Lyon. Navigator, Lieutenant Ted Carse, Royal Australian Naval Volunteer Reserve. He'll keep this fishing boat alive through 5,000 miles of Japanese-controlled ocean. The crew stains their skin brown with chemical dye that will cause skin problems for months. Hair dyed black. European clothes replaced with sarongs and Asian fishing gear. Every piece of garbage they throw overboard checked to ensure nothing European floats to the surface. 1 British rapper could expose the entire operation. August 13th, 1943. Thursday Island to Exmouth Gulf. Western Australia. Repairs and refueling. The full boats arrive from England at the last minute. Manufactured by Harris Lebus, Model Mark I. They're defective, missing parts, wrong specifications. Davidson's team works around the clock, making emergency modifications. Frameworks that won't fit properly. Outer skins that leak. no time to test them properly. September 2nd, 1943, final departure. The crate leaves Exmouth Gulf carrying 14 men whose names would become legend. Major Ivan Lyon, commanding. Lieutenant Commander Donald Davidson, second in command. Lieutenant Ted Carse, navigating. Lieutenant Robert Page, explosives expert. Sub-Lieutenant Walter Falls, communications. Able Seaman Andrew. Happy Houston, weapons specialist. Able Seaman Arthur, Jock Campbell. Boat maintenance. Able Seaman Kevin Kane, supplies. Leading stoker James. Paddy Haw McDowell, engineer. Corporal Ronald Morris, intelligence. Corporal Andrew Crilly, medical. Acting Corporal Mostyn Berryman, reconnaissance. Private Douglas Warren, logistics. Leading Seaman Frederick Marsh, backup navigator. The voyage, 5,000 miles through waters controlled by the Imperial Japanese Navy. The crate looks exactly like thousands of other fishing boats operating between Java and Malaya. Rusty, weathered, unremarkable. The perfect disguise. But underneath the deck plates, enough explosives to cripple Japan's southern supply line. Day 3, disaster. The propeller shaft snaps. Dead in the water in enemy-controlled ocean. A passing United States Navy submarine spots them. USS Bonefish surfaces. The submarine crew repairs the shaft while the crate crew maintains their fishing boat disguise. One wrong word and the entire operation dies before it starts. Day 8, force 9 gale. 30-foot waves. The heavily laden crate almost sinks. McDowell keeps the engine running through flooding that would kill a larger vessel. The full boats, stored on deck, nearly wash overboard. Without those canoes, there is no mission. The crew lashes everything down and rides out the storm. September the 24th, 1943. 22 days after departure. The crate arrives off Singapore. They can see the harbor lights, Japanese patrol boats moving in regular patterns. This is it. Tonight, 6 men will paddle 50 kilometers to establish a forward base. The other 8 will wait with the crate. Ready for emergency extraction or to become the next wave if the first team dies. Lyon selects his assault team, himself and Houston in full boat 1, Davidson and Falls in full boat 2, Page and Jones in full boat 3. 6 men to destroy 7 ships. Each full boat carries 2 limpet mines. Magnetic explosives with time delay fuses. Attached to ship's hull below the waterline, set for 6 hours. Paddle away before they detonate. Night of September 24th. The 6 men launch their full boats from the crate, 50 kilometers to Pulau Dongas, a small island near Singapore Harbor. 50 kilometers paddling through Japanese patrol areas, through minefields, past listening posts, in complete darkness, navigation by compass and stars only, no GPS, no radio contact. If they miss the island, they die. 6 hours later. They reach Pulau Dongas, find a cave on the shore, set up forward base, hidden from Japanese reconnaissance flights that patrol daily. From here they can observe Singapore harbor traffic, count ships, plan approach routes, wait for the perfect moment to strike. September 25th. Reconnaissance. Through binoculars, they watch Singapore harbor. Approximately 59,000 tons of Japanese shipping at anchor. Tankers, cargo vessels, transport ships, all critical to Japan's ability to move fuel and supplies through Southeast Asia. The ships sit in 4 main anchorages. Examination anchorage closest to the harbor mouth, Keppel Harbor to the east and west. Perfect targets. The harbor defenses, patrol boats running regular circuits, searchlights sweeping the water every 20 minutes. Boom defenses with steel nets to stop submarines. Anti-aircraft guns on every major vessel. Guards walking the wharfs. Singapore Harbor has been turned into a fortress. The Japanese believe it's impenetrable. Lyon finalizes the attack plan. 3 full boat teams, different approach routes. Hit different anchorages simultaneously. Full boat 1, Lyon and Houston target examination anchorage. Full boat 2, Davidson and Falls take eastern Keppel Harbor. Full boat 3, Page and Jones hit western Keppel Harbor. Attack at 2100 hours. Attach limpets. Withdraw to rendezvous point. Back to crate before dawn. September 26th, 1943. Final preparation. Each limpet mine checked. Time delay set for 6 hours. Detonation at 0500 hours, just before dawn. The teams blacken their faces with charcoal. Check compass bearings one final time. 70 kilograms of explosive divided between 6 men. If they're caught, they'll be tortured before execution. If they succeed, they'll cripple Japan's southern logistics. 2100 hours. Launch. 3 full boats slip into the dark water. Silent paddles. No splashing. They disappear into Singapore Harbor like ghosts. Behind them, the cave on Pulau Dongas waits for their return. Ahead, 7 Japanese ships sit at anchor, completely unaware that death is paddling toward them through the darkness. Fullboat 1 reaches examination anchorage first. Lion and Houston paddle beneath the massive hull of their target. 10,000-ton vessel. Lion attaches the first limpet mine to the port side, just below the waterline. Houston keeps watch. Magnetic clamp clicks into place. 6-hour timer activated. They move to their second target. Halfway through attaching the second mine, Houston grabs Lion's arm, points up. 10 feet above them, a Japanese crewman stares down from a porthole, watching them work. For 30 seconds, the crewman's face is visible in the porthole. He sees 2 men in the water. He sees Lion's hands on the ship's hull, then he pulls his head back inside. No alarm sounds. Either he doesn't understand what he's seeing, or he decides it's not worth reporting. Lion and Houston finish their work. 2 limpet mines attached. They paddle away into darkness. Behind them, 2 ships carry enough explosive to blow holes 2 meters wide in their hulls. The timer counts down, 4 hours and 30 minutes until detonation. Eastern Keppel Harbor. Davidson and Falls guide their full boat through the harbor boom. Steel nets designed to stop submarines. They follow a Japanese tug through the opening. Once inside, they're surrounded by lights. The wharfs are illuminated like Luna Park. Town hall chimes ring across the water. No blackout procedures. The Japanese feel completely safe. Davidson spots targets. Several ships, but nothing large enough to waste limpets on. They decide to move deeper into the harbor. Paddle right underneath the wharfs where Japanese guards walk overhead. The guards' footsteps echo off the water 6 feet below. Davidson and Falls attach their mines to 2 transport vessels, set the timers, withdraw through the same boom opening. Western Keppel Harbor, Page and Jones find the richest targets. 3 large vessels, including what appears to be a tanker. They attach limpet mines to 2 ships, both over 5,000 tons. Critical to Japanese fuel supplies, their mines are set for the same detonation time, 0500 hours. All 3 full boat teams complete their attacks. 6 ships mined. They withdraw to their individual rally points, then begin the 50-kilometer paddle back to Pulau Dongas, 50 kilometers through Japanese patrol areas while carrying the evidence of sabotage. If Japanese patrol boats find them now, the entire operation fails. 0300 hours. September 27th, the full boat teams reach Pulau Dongas, hide the boats in the cave, set up observation post with telescope. At 0500 hours, they'll discover whether their mission succeeded or failed, whether 6 limpet mines can cripple the Japanese war machine. 0500 hours exactly. 6 explosions shatter the morning calm. Orange fireballs rise over Singapore Harbor. Thick black smoke rolls across the water. Japanese patrol boats race in all directions, sirens wailing. Harbor defense alarms sound across the city. Through their telescope, the commandos watch chaos unfold. 6 ships hit, 3 sink immediately, 3 more burning and listing. Approximately 37,000 tons of Japanese shipping destroyed or damaged in 6 minutes. The largest ships targeted included what Japanese records later identified as Shosei Maru, 5,600 tons, formerly the British tanker Solon, under repair from attack damage until December 17th. Nichiren Maru, 5,400 tons, also under repair for 2 months. The psychological impact? Massive. Singapore Harbor was supposed to be impregnable. If commandos could strike here, they could strike anywhere. Japanese confidence in their Pacific fortress shattered. Allied morale across the theater boosted. The raid proved that Japan was not invincible. But Lion's team can't celebrate yet. They're still 50 kilometers from the Crate in enemy territory. Japanese patrol boats are searching every island. Aircraft launched from Singapore airfields. The Imperial Navy has mobilized to find whoever did this. The commandos have to reach extraction before they're discovered. September 28th, the full boat teams remain hidden in the cave while Japanese search operations sweep the area. Patrol boats circle Pulau Dongas twice but don't land search parties. Aircraft fly overhead every 2 hours. The commandos lie motionless under camouflage tarps, watching Japanese forces hunt for them. October 2nd. After 4 days hiding in the cave, the search intensity decreases. Lion decides to attempt extraction. The 3 full boat teams leave Pulau Dongas under cover of darkness. 50-kilometer paddle back to the Crate's waiting position. Their last chance to escape before Japanese forces close the trap. 0200 hours, October 3rd. The full boat teams reach the Crate's position. 8 men have been waiting for 6 days, not knowing if their comrades were alive or dead. Ted Karst records in the ship's log. Picked up remainder of personnel and returned down strait. Well, we are on our way home. Thank God. The return voyage, 5,000 miles through increasingly dangerous waters. Japanese forces now know that commandos are operating in their territory. Every fishing boat is suspect, every unusual sighting investigated. The Crate maintains its disguise while carrying the most wanted men in the Pacific. October 8th, Lombok Strait. The most dangerous passage of the entire voyage. Narrow waters between Java and Lombok, heavily patrolled. Japanese auxiliary minesweeper WA-102 approaches the crate, stops 50 meters away. Japanese officers examine the fishing boat through binoculars for 8 minutes that feel like 8 hours. The crate crew maintains perfect discipline, acting like Indonesian fishermen, speaking Malay, showing no sign that they're Australian commandos who just destroyed Japan's most important harbor. The Japanese officers see exactly what they expect. Another rusty fishing boat, WA-102, moves on. The crate continues toward Australia. October 19th, 1943. 47 days after departure, the crate reaches Exmouth Gulf. Operation Jaywick complete. 14 men departed, 14 men return, 0 casualties, 7 Japanese ships destroyed or damaged, 37,000 tons of enemy shipping eliminated. Distance traveled, 8,000 kilometers through enemy-controlled waters. The operation remains classified top secret. No publicity, no medal ceremonies, no recognition. The success must be hidden to preserve the crate for future missions. The men who carried out the most successful commando raid in the Pacific theater returned to anonymity. But in Singapore, the consequences have only begun. The Japanese have no idea that Australian commandos carried out the attack. They assume local saboteurs were responsible. Chinese guerrillas or British prisoners of war. The Kempeitai military police begin investigating. Their method: arrest everyone suspicious and torture them until someone confesses. October 10th, 1943, 0900 hours. The double 10th incident begins. Lieutenant Colonel Haruzo Sumida, chief of the Kempeitai Singapore branch, orders a raid on Changi prison. 57 civilian internees arrested. Europeans who had been imprisoned since Singapore's fall. Men and women who had never heard of Operation Jaywick. The prisoners are transported to the YMCA building on Stamford Road, now the Kempeitai East District branch headquarters. Also to Central Police Station and Smith Street Police Station, crammed into cells designed for single occupancy. Fed once daily. Water from the same commode used as toilet. Forbidden to speak to each other. The interrogation begins immediately. The Kempeitai want to know about the harbor attack, who planned it, how they got the explosives, where the saboteurs are hiding, but the prisoners know nothing. They've been locked in Changi prison since 1942. They have no information about Lion's raid because they had nothing to do with it. Elizabeth Choi Soo Moy, 29 years old, Singaporean educator, arrested October 29th after her husband Choi Koon Heng is taken by the Kempeitai. She had been helping Changi prisoners by smuggling medicine, money, and messages, acts of mercy that the Japanese interpret as espionage. Elizabeth's interrogation lasts 9 months, beaten repeatedly. Forced to kneel on angled wooden bars for hours, stripped and tied to a frame, electric shocks applied to her body for 15 minutes at a time. The trauma so severe she'll never touch electrical switches again. Tortured in front of her husband to break both their spirits. The Kempeitai bring her husband to witness her torture on December 9th. He describes the session in his later testimony. She was tied up with hands and legs to a frame kneeling on firewood. They took out 2 leads from a generator and applied it to her body for 15 minutes. She was screaming all the time. The psychological warfare. They're sentenced to death, told to say goodbye. Then informed it was just another interrogation technique. Rob Healy Scott, British barrister, former Foreign Office employee, the Kempeitai's primary suspect. They believe he organized the harbor attack from inside Changi prison. Scott is tortured for a month by Warrant Officer Monai Tadamori. Water torture. Beatings that leave his face badly disfigured. He confesses to being anti-Japanese, but knows nothing about Operation Jaywick because he had nothing to do with it. The torture continues for 7 months. The Kempeitai use every technique in their arsenal. Starvation, sleep deprivation, electric shock, psychological manipulation, sexual humiliation, all to extract confessions about a raid that none of the prisoners participated in. 15 of the 57 arrested die from their treatment. Their crime, being in the wrong place when the Japanese needed scapegoats. Bishop John Wilson of St. Andrew's Cathedral, arrested October 17th, placed in the cell next to Elizabeth Choi, beaten for 3 days before the Japanese accept he's not a ringleader. In prison, he secretly conducts Christian services, consecrates burnt rice grains and contaminated water from the cell commode, gives Elizabeth Choi Holy Communion while she kneels by the bars of his cell, a moment of grace in hell. The irony becomes clear after the war when Operation Jaywick records are released. None of the tortured prisoners had any connection to the raid. The Kempeitai spent 7 months brutalizing innocent people, while the real culprits sailed safely back to Australia. Lyon and his team never knew that their success caused this nightmare for Singapore's civilians. March 18th. 1946, The double 10th trial begins. 21 Kempeitai members charged with war crimes. Supreme Court Building, Singapore. Military tribunal presided over by Lieutenant Colonel S. The evidence? Testimony from survivors like Elizabeth Choi. Medical records documenting torture. Proof that innocent civilians were brutalized because Japan couldn't accept that enemy commandos had penetrated their defenses. The verdicts: 8 death sentences, including Lieutenant Colonel Sumida Haruzo and Warrant Officer Monai Tadamori. 6 life imprisonment sentences, 7 acquitted, but no sentence can restore the 15 people who died or heal the trauma inflicted on the survivors. The double 10th incident stands as proof that even successful operations have unintended consequences. Elizabeth Choi survives 193 days of imprisonment, released wearing the same clothes she entered into, now displayed in Singapore's National Museum, awarded the Order of the British Empire in 1946 for her wartime courage. She becomes a symbol of civilian resistance during the Japanese occupation. Her faith in God sustained her through torture that would have broken most people. Meanwhile, the success of Operation Jaywick inspires another mission. Lion begins planning Operation Rimau for 1944. A larger raid with 23 commandos. New technology, Sleeping Beauty mini-submarines. The goal, repeat Jaywick's success with even greater destruction. But lightning rarely strikes the same place twice. September 11th, 1944. HMS Porpoise submarine leaves Careening Bay with Lion's Rimau team. 15 Sleeping Beauties, 11 full boats, 15 tons of supplies and explosives. The submarine transfers everything to a captured Chinese junk called Mustika. Lion leads 23 men toward Singapore for the second time. October 4th, Mustika reaches the staging area, but Japanese security has increased massively since Jaywick. More patrols, better surveillance, heightened awareness that commandos might return. On October 10th, 2 hours before the raid begins, disaster strikes. Malay police patrol boat Heiho challenges the Mustika near Kasue Island. Someone on the junk panics and opens fire. Some of the patrol crew are killed, but at least one escapes to report the incident. Lion knows Japanese forces will swarm the area within hours. He makes the hardest decision of his military career: scuttle the mission. Lion destroys the Mustika and the top-secret Sleeping Beauties with explosive charges. Orders his men to split into 4 groups. Make their way back to the submarine rendezvous using full boats. But he leads 7 men into Singapore harbor anyway. One last attempt to strike at Japanese shipping. 7 men in full boats against the entire Imperial Navy. October 15th, 1944. Surya Island, Bag. Just off Pulau Mapur. Lion's group of 7 men makes a final stand. Japanese patrol catches up with them at 1400 hours. Gun battle ensues. Lion, Davidson, Ross, Stewart, and Campbell choose defensive positions on the northern beach. They have plenty of ammunition and grenades. The Japanese have over 100 soldiers. The battle lasts 4 hours. Lion and Ross climb a large tree, equipped with magazines and grenades. From this elevated position, they inflict tremendous casualties. Japanese soldiers can't locate the source of the gunfire. Grenades rain down from above. The unseen enemy accounts for over 60 Japanese dead and wounded. At midnight, Japanese soldiers spot muzzle flashes from the tree. Grenades thrown into the branches. Shrapnel kills Lion and Ross instantly. They fought a rearguard action to let their wounded comrades escape. Stewart remains hidden, but his full boat is captured. He's eventually caught and executed with the other survivors on July 7th, 1945. Of 23 men on Operation Rimau, 13 die in action and 10 are captured and beheaded. Only Operation Jaywick achieved complete success. 14 men out, 14 men back, the perfect raid that could never be repeated. The Crate survives the war, present at Ambon when Japanese forces surrender on September 12th, 1945. Later returned to Australia, where she's preserved at the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney. The fishing boat that penetrated the heart of the Japanese Empire now serves as a monument to the men who proved that audacity and skill could overcome any defense. The legacy of Operation Jaywick extends far beyond the ships destroyed in Singapore harbor. It established the template for modern special operations: small teams, unconventional approaches, surgical strikes against strategic targets. The techniques pioneered by Lion and his commandos influence military doctrine to this day, but the human cost reminds us that even successful operations have consequences. The Double Tenth incident proves that civilians often pay the price for military actions they had no part in. 15 innocent people died because Japan couldn't admit that enemy forces had breached their defenses. Their torture and execution stands as a testament to the brutality of total war. Today, Singapore remembers both sides of this story. Operation Jaywick is commemorated as a remarkable feat of military courage. The Double Tenth incident is memorialized as a tragedy of civilian suffering, Both are part of Singapore's complex wartime heritage, showing how individual acts of heroism and brutality shaped the Pacific War's outcome. The technical details of Operation Jaywick reveal just how close the mission came to failure at every stage. The full boats manufactured by Harris Lebus arrived defective from England, missing parts, wrong specifications. Davidson's team spent the final weeks before departure making emergency repairs. Framework joints that wouldn't lock properly, canvas skins that leaked at the seams. Each full boat had to be individually modified to function. Walter Hone's original designs called for military-grade materials. What arrived were civilian models adapted for combat use. The paddle shaft connections were weak points that could snap under stress. The compass mounts weren't properly secured. Even the folding mechanisms had flaws that could trap a man's fingers during emergency assembly in darkness. During training at Camp X, the commandos discovered that standard paddling techniques wouldn't work for 50-kilometer infiltration missions. Normal kayaking creates splash patterns visible to sentries with night vision scopes. Davidson developed silent paddling methods, shorter strokes, angled blade entry, elimination of drip patterns, techniques that added hours to journey time but kept the teams invisible. Navigation posed another challenge. No GPS systems in 1943, no electronic aids. The commandos navigated by compass bearing and star positions. But weather could obscure stars for hours. Compass deviation near metal ship holes could throw navigation off by degrees. A 2-degree error over 50 kilometers means missing the target island entirely. The explosive technology was cutting edge for 1943. 808 plastic explosive had only recently been developed by British scientists. More stable than TNT, more powerful than dynamite. 70 kilograms carried on, the crate could theoretically destroy 15 ships. But limpet mine technology was still experimental. Each limpet mine contained 2 pounds of 808 explosive, magnetic clamps designed to attach to steel ship hulls, time delay fuses adjustable from 2 to 12 hours, but magnetic strength had to be calculated precisely. Too weak, and the mine falls off. Too strong, and it can't be removed quickly during attachment. The margin for error, millimeters of magnetic gap. Timer mechanisms used clockwork systems adapted from British alarm clocks. Reliable, but not precise. A 6-hour setting could vary by plus or minus 30 minutes depending on temperature and humidity. In tropical conditions, metal expansion could slow the mechanism. Cold could speed it up. The commandos had no way to synchronize detonation times exactly. The ship identification process required weeks of intelligence gathering. Aerial reconnaissance photos from Royal Australian Air Force flights over Singapore, agent reports from civilians still in the city, Japanese shipping manifests captured from other operations, building a database of target vessels, their tonnage, strategic importance, and defensive measures. The 3 primary targets identified were: examination anchorage contained the highest value shipping, mostly tankers carrying fuel from Dutch East Indies refineries to Japanese forces throughout Southeast Asia. Eastern Keppel Harbor held transport vessels, moving troops and equipment. Western Keppel Harbor specialized in cargo ships carrying raw materials back to Japan. Japanese defensive measures were formidable, but not insurmountable. Harbor boom consisted of steel cable nets suspended from floating buoys, designed to stop submarines but navigable by small boats following harbor traffic through the openings. Patrol boat routes were predictable, following set patterns every 20 minutes. Searchlight sweeps were systematic but left gaps in coverage. Anti-aircraft gun positions were marked on captured Japanese charts, mostly concentrated around major military installations and fuel storage facilities. Light machine gun nests on the harbor breakwater, heavy artillery positions commanding the main shipping channels, all designed to repel large-scale attacks, not infiltration by 6 men in full boats. Communication security required complete radio silence during the infiltration phase. No contact with the crate from the time the full boat teams launched until they returned. If captured, the commandos carried no identification that could compromise the mission. No maps marked with friendly positions, no codebooks or cipher keys, just weapons, explosives, and emergency rations. The psychological preparation was as important as the physical training. These men knew they were likely to be captured and executed if caught. Japanese treatment of commandos captured during earlier raids had been brutal. Torture, followed by beheading, was standard procedure. No prisoner exchanges, no mercy for Special Forces operatives. Lyon addressed this reality directly during training. Each volunteer had to acknowledge that rescue was impossible if things went wrong. No Australian forces could reach Singapore Harbor. No submarine could penetrate the defenses for extraction. Success meant completing the mission and reaching the crate. Failure meant death. The deception measures extended beyond the obvious disguises. The crate's cargo manifest listed standard fishing equipment and trade goods, rice, dried fish, cloth, tools. Hidden beneath were weapons, explosives, and military supplies. The cargo had to appear authentic to Japanese inspectors who might board for random searches. Medical supplies were limited to basic first aid equipment, no morphine or anesthetics that could identify the crew as military. If wounded during the mission, the commandos would have to treat injuries with field dressings and willpower. Serious wounds would compromise the entire team's ability to escape. Weather intelligence came from Australian meteorological services with limited data about conditions around Singapore, monsoon patterns, tidal schedules, moon phases for optimal darkness. But local weather could change rapidly. A sudden storm could scatter the full boat teams. Fog could hide patrol boats until collision was unavoidable. The fuel calculations were precise to the liter. The crate carried just enough diesel for the round trip with minimal reserves. Extra fuel meant extra weight that slowed the vessel and made it ride lower in the water. Too little fuel meant being stranded in enemy waters. McDowell monitored consumption constantly, adjusting engine speed to maximize range. Food rationing began before departure. Standard military rations would last the entire voyage, but provided minimal calories for the physical demands ahead. The commandos supplemented their diet by fishing during daylight hours when the crate maintained its fishing boat disguise. Fresh fish also helped maintain the deception if Japanese forces inspected their catch. Freshwater was the most critical limitation, 70 liters per man for a 47-day voyage in tropical conditions, less than 1.5 liters per day including drinking, cooking, and basic hygiene. Water discipline was absolute. No waste. No luxuries like washing clothes or equipment. Dehydration was a constant threat. Spare parts for the full boats were improvised from materials available on the crate, canvas patches cut from fishing nets, metal fittings machined from engine components, rope spliced from rigging lines. If a full boat was damaged during the mission, repairs would have to be made with whatever materials the commandos could carry. The intelligence picture was incomplete but sufficient for mission planning. Japanese ship movements followed predictable patterns. Tankers arrived from Palembang refineries every 3 days. Transport vessels departed for forward bases twice weekly. Cargo ships loaded raw materials for Japan monthly. This schedule gave Lion's team target selection flexibility. Harbor security variations were noted by Australian intelligence analysts. Patrol boat schedules intensified during full moon periods. Guard changes at shore installations occurred at 6-hour intervals. Searchlight patterns adjusted seasonally based on sunset times. These details could mean the difference between success and discovery. The backup plans were minimal by necessity. If the full boat teams were compromised, the crate would wait 24 hours at the extraction point before departing. No radio contact meant no status updates. Kars would have to decide whether to risk the entire crew waiting for men who might already be dead. Individual escape and evasion plans were discussed, but largely theoretical. If separated from their full boat partner, each commando would attempt to reach pre-designated rally points on nearby islands. From there, try to signal the crate during its return voyage. But the chances of survival alone in enemy territory were minimal. The mission's success created immediate tactical consequences. Japanese harbor security increased dramatically after September 27th. More patrol boats, brighter searchlights, additional boom defenses, anti-submarine nets extended deeper into the harbor approaches. The Japanese Navy had learned that their most secure anchorage wasn't secure at all. Strategic implications rippled across the Pacific theater. If commandos could penetrate Singapore harbor, they could strike anywhere. Japanese commanders diverted resources from offensive operations to defensive measures. Patrol boats that could have been hunting Allied submarines were instead guarding harbors. Aircraft assigned to combat missions were reassigned to reconnaissance flights over friendly waters. The propaganda value was enormous but unused. Operation Jaywick remained classified for years after the war ended. No press releases about the successful raid, no boost to Allied morale when it was desperately needed. The silence was necessary to preserve the crate for future missions. But it meant that one of the war's most successful commando operations went unrecognized. Japanese naval intelligence began developing countermeasures immediately. Underwater detection equipment installed at major ports, magnetic sensors to identify limpet mines on ship hulls, more frequent hull inspections by divers, random schedule changes for patrol boats. The Imperial Navy was adapting, making future operations exponentially more dangerous. The human cost of this adaptation fell on Singapore's civilian population. Unable to admit that enemy forces had penetrated their defenses, Japanese authorities blamed local saboteurs. The Kempeitai investigation expanded beyond the initial 57 arrests. Hundreds more civilians detained for questioning. The Reign of Terror lasted until April 1944. Interrogation techniques used by the Kempeitai violated every principle of the Geneva Convention. But Japan had never ratified the sections covering treatment of civilian prisoners. Electric shock torture became standard procedure. Water torture applied until victims lost consciousness. Psychological torture involving mock executions and threats against family members. The medical records from survivors reveal the systematic nature of the abuse: broken bones from beatings, burns from cigarettes and hot metal, malnutrition from starvation diets, infections from unsanitary conditions, mental trauma that persisted for decades after liberation. Elizabeth Choi's case was typical, not exceptional. Documentation captured after Japan's surrender proved the torture yielded no useful intelligence. The Kempeitai learned nothing about Operation Jaywick because their victims knew nothing. 7 months of brutality produced only false confessions extracted under extreme duress, confessions that couldn't be verified because they were completely fabricated. The legal aftermath took years to resolve. The double 10th trial established precedents for prosecuting war crimes against civilians, but many perpetrators escaped justice by destroying records or fleeing before Allied forces arrived. Some Kempeitai officers were never identified or located. Others received sentences that seemed inadequate given the scope of their crimes. Survivor testimony at the trial provided detailed evidence of torture methods. Elizabeth Choi's account of electric shock treatment, Rob Scott's description of water torture, Bishop Wilson's testimony about psychological abuse. Medical experts documented injuries consistent with systematic torture. The evidence was overwhelming, but the sentences were limited by military law. The contrast between Operation Jaywick's success and its unintended consequences raises ethical questions that persist today. Was destroying 7 ships worth the torture and death of 15 innocent civilians? Could Lyon and his team have predicted the Japanese response? Should successful military operations be measured only by their direct tactical results? Modern special operations doctrine addresses these concerns through more sophisticated intelligence and planning. Psychological operations, specialists analyze likely enemy responses. Cultural experts assess civilian population risks. Legal advisors review compliance with international law. The lessons of the Double Tenth incident influenced how democracies conduct covert operations. But in 1943, these considerations were secondary to immediate military necessity. Japan controlled most of the Pacific. Allied forces were fighting for survival. Every Japanese ship destroyed potentially saved Allied lives in future battles. The strategic calculus was brutal but clear: cripple enemy logistics by any means necessary. The technical innovations pioneered during Operation Jaywick influenced post-war military development. Silent paddling techniques became standard for amphibious reconnaissance units. Limpet mine technology evolved into more sophisticated underwater demolition systems. Full boat designs improved based on lessons learned during the Singapore infiltration. Training methods developed at Camp X were adopted by special forces units worldwide. Extended endurance courses in hostile environments, navigation training using only basic instruments, camouflage and concealment in tropical conditions, hand-to-hand combat optimized for silent elimination of sentries. These techniques remained relevant through decades of subsequent conflicts. The Crate's conversion from fishing boat to military transport established templates for future unconventional warfare platforms. Civilian vessels modified for covert operations, hidden compartments for weapons and equipment, disguised communication systems, alternative identity documentation. These concepts were refined and expanded throughout the Cold War. Personnel selection criteria proved as important as technical preparation. Lyon chose volunteers based on psychological stability under extreme stress, physical fitness for extended maritime operations, technical skills with explosives and small boats, cultural adaptability for extended periods in disguise. Most importantly, absolute reliability under pressure when team members' lives depended on individual performance. The intelligence networks supporting Operation Jaywick were primitive compared to modern standards, but effective within their limitations. Human intelligence from civilians still in Singapore, signal intelligence from intercepted Japanese radio traffic, photographic reconnaissance from long-range aircraft, ship movement tracking based on port observations, integration of multiple sources to create actionable targeting intelligence. Operational security measures included compartmentalized information sharing. Only essential personnel knew the complete mission details, cover stories for training activities that concealed the true objective, false documentation to mislead enemy intelligence if discovered, communication protocols that prevented compromise of other operations if Jaywick failed. The timing of Operation Jaywick was carefully calculated to maximize impact while minimizing risk. Moon phase selected for optimal darkness during infiltration, seasonal weather patterns to avoid monsoon storms, Japanese shipping schedules to ensure maximum target availability, coordination with other Allied operations to prevent interference or resource conflicts. Post-mission analysis revealed several factors that contributed to success: Japanese overconfidence in Singapore Harbor's defenses, predictable patrol patterns that created exploitable gaps, limited night vision capabilities that favored small boat infiltration, cultural assumptions that discounted the possibility of long-range commando raids, bureaucratic delays in implementing security improvements after earlier intelligence warnings. The individual stories of Operation Jaywick participants illustrate the human dimension of special operations. Happy Houston's coolness when spotted by the Japanese crewmen, Davidson's navigation skills, threading foal boats through harbor defenses, Page's explosive expertise ensuring maximum damage from limited resources, Kars's seamanship keeping the crate operational through mechanical failures in severe weather. Each man faced personal moments of terror and doubt during the mission, paddling 50 kilometers through enemy waters knowing that discovery meant death, attaching explosives to ship hulls while guards walked overhead, waiting in the cave on Pulau Dongas while Japanese forces searched nearby islands, the psychological strain of maintaining operational discipline while processing the constant threat of capture and torture. The support crew aboard the crate experienced their own form of stress, waiting for 8 days, not knowing whether the assault teams were alive or dead, maintaining fishing boat routines while prepared for emergency combat or high-speed escape, rationing supplies and fuel without knowing how long the mission might last, ready to sacrifice themselves if necessary to extract the full boat teams. Medical challenges during the voyage included treatment of injuries from the full boat modifications, cut fingers from sharp metal fittings, rope burns from hasty rigging repairs, seasickness during the Force 9 gale that nearly sank the vessel, skin reactions from the chemical dyes used for racial disguise, basic first aid with limited supplies and no possibility of medical evacuation. The return voyage presented different but equally serious risks. Japanese forces now actively hunting for the commandos responsible for the harbor attack, increased patrols along likely escape routes, orders to investigate all suspicious vessels, the psychological pressure of successful infiltration replaced by fear of capture during extraction. Navigation during the return became more complex as Japanese search patterns disrupted normal shipping traffic, avoiding areas where patrol boats concentrated their searches, maintaining fishing boat appearance while taking evasive routes, balancing speed versus stealth as fuel supplies decreased. The margin for error narrowed with each day closer to Australian waters. Communication discipline remained absolute throughout the return voyage. No radio transmissions that could reveal their position. No celebration that could compromise operational security. Maintaining Indonesian fishermen personas until safely within Allied-controlled waters. The psychological strain of suppressing natural relief and excitement about the mission's success. The final approach to Exmouth Gulf required careful coordination to avoid engagement with Australian forces, identification procedures to prevent attack by friendly aircraft or submarines, recognition signals to confirm identity without compromising security, debriefing protocols that preserved operational intelligence while acknowledging mission completion. Individual debriefings revealed the mission's impact on each participant, psychological evaluation to assess combat stress and readiness for future operations, medical examination to document injuries and treatment requirements, intelligence gathering to capture lessons learned for training future special operations teams, recognition of exceptional performance under extreme conditions. The classified nature of Operation Jaywick meant that public recognition was delayed for decades. No immediate medals or commendations that could reveal the mission's existence, no press coverage of their return to Australia. No heroes welcome for men who had accomplished one of the war's most daring raids. Their sacrifice was known only to a few intelligence officers and senior commanders. Personal costs included long-term health effects from the chemical skin dyes, psychological trauma from months of extreme stress and danger, relationship difficulties from extended absence and inability to discuss their experiences, financial hardship from military pay that didn't compensate for the risks undertaken, social isolation from carrying classified secrets that couldn't be shared. The legacy personnel went on to distinguished careers in military and civilian life. Lyon's death during Operation Remau made him a posthumous hero. Davidson continued special operations until war's end. Kars became instrumental in preserving the crate for future generations. Their experiences influenced development of Australian Special Forces doctrine for decades. Training programs based on Operation Jaywick prepared commandos for similar missions throughout the Pacific Campaign. Improved full boat designs incorporating lessons from the Singapore raid. Better explosive devices with more reliable timer mechanisms. Enhanced infiltration techniques adapted for different target environments. Personnel selection criteria, refined based on performance analysis. The strategic deception achieved by Operation Jaywick extended far beyond the immediate tactical results. Japanese commanders never fully understood how the attack was executed. Intelligence reports speculated about submarine-launched swimmers, aircraft drop demolition teams, or sabotage by local resistance fighters. The truth that 14 men in a fishing boat had penetrated their most secure harbor remained hidden until after the war. This uncertainty forced Japan to defend against multiple threat scenarios. Resources diverted to anti-swimmer defenses that weren't necessary. Aircraft patrols searching for submarine launch platforms that didn't exist. Investigation of local resistance networks that had no connection to the raid. The psychological impact multiplied the mission's effectiveness far beyond the ships actually destroyed. Modern analysis, using Japanese wartime records and communications intercepts, reveals the true extent of Operation Jaywick's impact. Ship construction resources diverted to repair damaged vessels. Fuel transportation disrupted for weeks while alternative routes were established. Strategic materials delayed in reaching Japanese war industries. Personnel reassignments to strengthen harbor security at the expense of offensive operations. The precedent established by Operation Jaywick influenced Allied special operations strategy for the remainder of the war. Similar raids planned against other Japanese-held ports. Modified techniques applied to different target sets. Personnel and equipment resources allocated to expand special operations capabilities. Integration of commando raids with larger strategic bombing and naval campaigns. But the human cost revealed by the Double Tenth incident also influenced operational planning. Greater consideration of civilian population risks, intelligence assessment of likely enemy responses to successful raids, legal review of compliance with international law regarding treatment of prisoners, psychological operations designed to minimize reprisals against innocent populations. The final revelation came in 1994 when Japanese military archives were opened to researchers. Documents proving that Operation Jaywick achieved complete surprise. Communications intercepts showing the confusion and panic in Japanese command structure. Evidence that the harbor attack influenced strategic decisions about resource allocation and defensive priorities. Among these documents, a report from the harbor master at Singapore, dated September 28, 1943. It describes 6 explosions at 0500 hours, lists damage to 7 vessels totaling approximately 37,000 tons, recommends immediate security improvements including additional patrol boats, improved lighting, and underwater detection equipment. The report concludes, this attack demonstrates that enemy forces possess the capability and determination to strike our most secure installations. We must assume that similar attacks will be attempted at other locations. That assumption proved correct, but Operation Jaywick remained unique in its complete success. 14 men departed Australia, 14 men returned, 7 enemy ships destroyed or damaged, 0 friendly casualties. The perfect special operation that established the template for modern asymmetric warfare while revealing the unintended consequences that even successful military actions can create.